When the Winnipeg Jets returned to the National Hockey League, they brought one of the loudest and most passionate fan bases back with them. And while that's a wonderful story and everything, we forget that there's a hockey market that lost their NHL team, actually for the second time if we're talking about Atlanta. People to this day question Atlanta as a hockey market. Why didn't hockey work in Atlanta? And my question, especially after this trade tree, is why didn't the Thrashers work in Atlanta? The Thrashers made a lot of decisions that brought a lot of losses to Atlanta, and we're going to explore some of those in this trade tree video, ironically surrounding a player who never even played for them. This is the Marc Staal trade tree. Now, right off the bat, wait a sec, Steve. Marc Staal has only ever been traded once, and that was from the Rangers to the Red Wings. How do the Thrashers factor in? Well, you got me. This trade tree doesn't actually start with Marc Staal getting traded, but rather the pick that was used to select Marc Staal getting traded. At the 2005 NHL draft, the New York Rangers moved up in that draft, trading with the Atlanta Thrashers, and they paid a pretty penny to do it. The New York Rangers traded the 12th overall pick in 2005 to the Thrashers in exchange for the 16th overall pick, so only moving up 4 slots, and it cost them a second round pick in 2005, 41st overall. It's amazing because on the draft floor, you stop looking at it as first and second and third round picks and you just look at where they are. 41st overall is a pretty high pick, man. And the Rangers traded that essentially to the Atlanta Thrashers to move up 4 spots in the draft. They better really like whoever they pick. Well, funny enough, they did. Marc Staal is not the most attractive name in the NHL right now, and let's face it, he's on the back half of his NHL career. I think that's actually being kind. He was drafted 16 years ago. The big bruising defenseman never put up a ton of points. He's not exactly an analytical darling right now, but that doesn't mean I'm going to allow you to slander the man. Because if you pay a second round pick to move up 4 spots in the draft, that player better play for you for a long time. And Marc Staal was a New York Ranger for 892 games. And the thing is, it should have actually been a lot more. His career starts many years ago. At the beginning of the 2007-2008 season, he gets his first goal in November of that season, a pass from Scott Gomez, and he scores on who? Martin Brodeur. Talk about ripping the Band-Aid off and getting acquainted with the Rangers-Devils rivalry. His first goal is on Martin Brodeur. Yeah, I don't think you're gonna forget that one in a hurry. And he had some viral moments as well. You might remember Marc Staal as the guy who, fought Alexander Semin. One of the first great NHL gifts was they took out Marc Staal and they put like drums for Semin to beat on. Eventful to say the least. Marc Staal was yet another successful member of the Staal family in the National Hockey League. Eric Staal, already a Stanley Cup champion with the Carolina Hurricanes. Jordan Staal, making a ton of noise with the Pittsburgh Penguins. First round picks, all 3 of them, and their brother Jared was drafted into the NHL as well. Was he as good as the other 3? No, but 4 brothers in the same family getting drafted into the same league is slightly ridiculous. Now, a moment ago, I did say that Marc Staal should have played in more than the 892 games he did with the Rangers, and in 2011, an encounter with Eric would put his career on hold for a while. Simple play, split second along the half wall, Marc Staal gets absolutely leveled by his brother Eric. That hit was in February of 2011, and Marc would not play another game until January 2nd, 2012 at the Winter Classic. Years later, in 2016, Eric Staal would join the Rangers, and they would not just be brothers but also teammates. And in an interview with the New York Daily News, Eric said he wishes he never threw the hit at all. The bad luck continued for Marc in March of 2013 when he accidentally blocked a deflected slap shot. That was in March of 2013, and the ensuing eye injury kept Marc Staal out of action until the following season in October. Now, obviously, it wasn't all bad. In fact, the following season was the best of Marc Staal's career, or at least it's the farthest he ever went in the Stanley Cup playoffs, going all the way to the Stanley Cup final to take on the LA Kings. Now, we all know how that story ended. The Kings ended up winning, and the Rangers fell just short, but Marc Staal, having already played an entire Warriors career, was nowhere near done. And he played. And he continued to play, and he played, and he played, and he played, until one day, only last year in 2020, the New York Rangers traded Marc Staal to the Detroit Red Wings. And because of his cap hit and where he was at in his career, the Rangers didn't get exactly a lot back. The trade was Marc Staal and a 2021 second round pick heading to the Detroit Red Wings in exchange for everyone's favorite future considerations. Now, at the time I'm shooting this, the trade was less than a calendar year ago, so future considerations, I mean, it's not even the future yet. Often, future considerations are nothing. I'm not saying it's nothing, because it's not official. We'll keep an eye on it. But, for now, the New York Rangers side of this trade tree is done, and all they got out of that 2005 deal with the Thrashers is a warrior who played nearly 900 regular season games and dozens of Stanley Cup playoff games, including a trip to the Stanley Cup final. Great pick for the New York Rangers. They were right to move up 4 spots, unless the Atlanta Thrashers did something amazing with the 2 picks they got, right? Well, one of those picks was pretty good. Let's take a look at the second rounder, 41st overall. With that pick, the Atlanta Thrashers selected goaltender Ondrej Pavelec. We know Ondrej Pavelec played 379 games for the Atlanta Thrashers and Winnipeg Jets organization, and thanks to hockeyreference.com, we know that 362 of those games were starts. Over those nearly 400 games, he had a .907 save percentage and a .287 goals against average. Neither of those numbers are fantastic, but you gotta remember the team that he played for. The Thrashers weren't great, and when they first got to Winnipeg, the Jets weren't great. But in 2014-15, Pavelectricity struck Winnipeg. In that season, Pavelec was 22, 16, and 8, and if you do the math, that's actually 500, but if you ask Gary Bettman, no, that's 6 games over 500. But while going 22, 16, and 8, Pavelec had a .920 save percentage. He was stellar. Ironic for this trade tree, Pavelec only played for one other NHL team, and it was with the New York Rangers when he signed there as a free agent. But after that short stint with the Blue Shirts, he was done in the National Hockey League. You know what? Nearly 400 games out of a goaltender, especially with a second-round draft pick, is tidy business for the Atlanta Thrashers. Good for them. I'm sure they did great with the rest of the trade, too. No. Pavelec, in my opinion, was far and away the best part of the entire rest of this trade tree. That involves, let me just read my notes, over a dozen more people. Steve, just tell me the damage! Okay, I will. First round, 16th overall pick in 2005, the pick that Atlanta traded down for, they selected Alex Bure. And if you haven't heard that name before, that's because, unfortunately, he never played a single game in the National Hockey League. The next pick, 17th overall, was Martin Hanzal, and if you really want to feel bad about it, a few picks later, 21st overall, Tuukka Rask. I mean, sure, the Atlanta Thrashers missed out on Tuukka Rask, but you know who also missed out on Tuukka Rask is the team who drafted Tuukka Rask! It's one of the worst trades ever. It really is one of the worst trades. But anyway, we're not talking about that. 2 years after Bure is drafted, though, he's still a former 16th overall pick. He's got some draft value. Perfect candidate for a change of scenery trade, and he was. In fact, he was traded to the New York Rangers. Funny how these guys keep cropping up. For Pascal Dupuis and a 3rd-round pick in 2007. Now, whoa, you might be saying to yourself, a guy who never played in the NHL traded for Pascal Dupuis and a 3rd-round pick? That's an amazing trade for Atlanta. Well, Problem is Pascal Dupuis was only a member of the Atlanta Thrashers for 17 games to end that season, and then 62 the following because the Thrashers traded him. Dupuis, heck of a player, never played a full season for the Atlanta Thrashers before he was traded to, you guessed it, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Dupuis was packaged with his Atlanta teammate and future Hall of Famer Marian Hossa and sent to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for Eric Christensen, Angelo Esposito, Colby Armstrong, and a 1st-round pick in 2008. Hey, you want to know what it's like to go from the Atlanta Thrashers to a team that has Sidney Crosby on it? During the 07-08 season, in 62 games with the Atlanta Thrashers, Pascal Dupuis only had 15 points. Then he went to Pittsburgh, played 16 games, and had 12. In the same season, he went from scoring under 1/4 of a point per game to scoring 3/4 of a point per game. And of course, you know the story. The Penguins go all the way to the Stanley Cup final, only to lose to the Detroit Red Wings. So that summer, Marian Hossa says, that's it, I'm going to Detroit, where they play the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Stanley Cup final again the next season, and Pittsburgh wins that time. And the whole hockey world said, poor Marian Hossa, that sucks for him. And then he signed a forever contract in Chicago, and he won 3 cups, and we don't say that anymore. But I'm getting away from it all. This began with Pascal Dupuis and a 3rd-round pick. I'll start with the good news, and it's the 3rd-round pick. The 3rd-round pick in 2007 was actually flipped to the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's another trade with Pittsburgh in exchange for Chris Thorburn. Now, Thorburn wasn't exactly a Rocket Richard contender with the Atlanta Thrashers or the Winnipeg Jets. He played 709 games with the organization and only put up 121 points. But I think it's also important to mention that in those 709 games, Chris Thorburn had 832 penalty minutes because Chris Thorburn was there to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and he was all out of bubblegum. Like I said with Marc Staal, nearly 900 games with the Rangers organization. You cannot even slander that. Chris Thorburn played over 700 games for the Thrashers and Jets. That's a warrior. And the trade tree ends when Thorburn is sent to Vegas in the expansion draft. That is technically how that branch ends, but there's a bit of an asterisk on it. Because when Chris Thorburn went to Vegas in the expansion draft, there was actually a side deal done. That side deal included Vegas getting a 2019 third-round pick from the Winnipeg Jets, and also the Golden Knights and Jets swapped first-round picks in 2017. The Jets got the 24th pick, the Golden Knights got the 13th pick. Now, if you're a Jets fan right now, you're going, oh no, Vegas selected someone really good, didn't they? Yes, they did. Unfortunately, it was Nick Suzuki who they promptly traded. And I watched that Vegas versus Montreal series, and I'm willing to bet Vegas has some regrets. Now, the Jets got a pick of their own. With the 24th overall selection in 2017, the Jets select Logan Stanley. And it's tough because at the time I'm shooting this, there's all this debate. Oh, are the Jets going to expose Logan Stanley in this expansion draft with Seattle? And at the time I'm shooting this, I just don't know. I'm giving you all this information. How about you give me some? Let me know what the Jets decided to do in the comments section. Now that we're at the end of that branch, let's once again go back to the February 2007 trade. Once again, that trade was a third-round pick who the Jets used to get Chris Thorburn. Pittsburgh ended up using that pick on Robert Bortuzzo, and the other guy involved was Pascal Dupuis. As a refresher, Atlanta got Eric Christensen, Angelo Esposito, Colby Armstrong, and a first-rounder in 2008. This isn't gonna take long. Christensen, the 69th overall pick in 2002, only played 57 games with the Thrashers. He was then traded for Eric O'Dell, who played 41 games in the National Hockey League, and that's it. End of the branch. Moving on to Angelo Esposito. This guy, he was a big deal. I remember way back in the day, there were talks about this guy going top 5, even first overall in his draft. He dropped all the way to 20th, but he still obviously had some value. That's why he was involved in this deal. And it might surprise you that Angelo Esposito, like Alex Beret earlier in this trade tree, did not play a single game in the National Hockey League. Thrashers ended up flipping Esposito for another guy who was a former first-round pick, Kendall McArdle. He played 41 games in the NHL. And we're done with that part of the trade tree. Then there's Colby Armstrong, who I'm certainly not going to slander on account of he's a coworker. And I'm also not going to slander because he was a good member of the Atlanta Thrashers. He played in 179 games for that team, which is kind of funny because listen to him on the trade deadline show on Sportsnet talking about the day he found out he was traded to the Thrashers.
I have a game tonight, I'm sleeping. She's like, oh, you don't know? No. Did I get traded? Yes.
Mom broke the news to where?
Mom to where? No answer, just with, oh my boy. And my first thing I said, Atlanta?
It's a funny story, but that kind of says it all. No one really wanted to play there. So far, Colby Armstrong is far and away the best thing that the Thrashers got out of this deal. What about that first rounder in 2008, though? Well, we'll start with that first rounder was actually 29th overall because the Penguins went all the way to the Stanley Cup final that year. And they used it to select Dalton Laville. And if you've never heard that name before, that is because he never played a single NHL game either. In this single trade tree, the Thrashers drafted a guy 16th overall who never played in the NHL, acquired a guy who was a 20th overall pick who never played a game in the NHL, and drafted a guy with the 29th overall pick who never played a game in the NHL. That is how you be a bad team forever. And just to add a little spice to it, the Thrashers draft a guy who never played in the NHL, 29th overall in 2008. 2 picks later at 31st overall, Jakob Markstrom. Ouch. So look, I've done worse trade trees, okay? The Jordan Eberle trade tree, for example. That's a pretty bad trade tree. It's not that Atlanta got nothing. They got way more than nothing. Ondrej Pavelec certainly wasn't nothing. Chris Thorburn wasn't nothing. And Colby Armstrong wasn't nothing. Although Colby Armstrong was a lot more Marian Hossa than Pascal Dupuis. All part of the same trade, but I am shoehorning it a little bit. But I was alarmed when we did the research for this trade tree because so often when a team turns a pick, like literally just one pick, into so many assets over the years, which the Thrashers and Jets did, usually it works out so much better for the team. Because for crying out loud, they're gonna hit on some of the assets, on some of the players, on some of the picks. And the Thrashers did hit on a few things, but for most of the biggest parts of this trade tree, it was whiff after whiff after whiff. And when you whiff, you get bad. When you get bad, people are less likely to come to your hockey game. And if you do that for long enough, you leave. I mean, Jets fans don't even need to feel bad watching this video. Not only did you get your team back, but most of these mistakes in this trade tree weren't even your teams. Unless you're like passionate about the Jets' history in Atlanta. One thing's for sure, the Thrashers could have used a player like Marc Staal. So, what'd you think of this trade tree? Leave a comment in the comment box down below. But for now, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. If you have the chance to draft Tuukka Rask, you really should do it. But then, like, don't trade him.